What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Tactical Foul. I'm Kyle Grew, as always. Today, I have a very special guest. A lot of you, especially if you're coaches, may recognize the face. He is co-host of a popular soccer podcast in America, Soccer Chat, which, for, like I said, the coaches here, you may have seen him at the national convention. Obviously, it was virtual this year, so you didn't see him in person, which is unfortunate. But
Or maybe it is fortunate.
yeah, that's true. That is a very good point. But you would have seen his face there. He's also the head women's coach of Brescia University. And before we get into that, did you think that it was the Serie B team when they first offered you the job? Because when I saw that name, that's what I thought it was.
No. So Owensboro is about Owensboro, Kentucky is probably about 45 minutes from where I live in Evansville, Indiana, which is I grew up here, so I
Okay.
knew
All
what Brescia
right.
was.
All right.
However, it's funny you say that because I do remember, um, I want to say when I was in college or just after college. Um, I remember seeing like the ESPN ticker at the bottom with scores,
Yeah.
and it said Brescia, and I was like, "Well, that's crazy! Like that's a school in Kentucky." And I was actually recruiting this past summer, um, and this obviously European guy saw my shirt and walked up to me and was like, "Oh, Brescia, can I get a picture?" And I was like, yeah, sure." And he was going on, I need to send this to my friends. Oh my gosh, going on. And I made the comment, I was like, well, you know, this is a school, right? And he was like, is it? And I was like, yeah. He goes, oh, he's like, this is my hometown club. I was like, oh, no. I was like, this is a school in Kentucky. I was like, I know what you're talking about. But he just thought it was the coolest thing that, here was a school named after his hometown team. So yeah, not to be confused with the Italian pro side. But it is a real thing. Also, not to be confused with Bresh University in Canada, which that one I didn't know.
I didn't know that one either. So before we get too far into this, the head men's coach of the women's team at Brescia University, not depending on who you ask, Brescia University, but some random guy that wants a picture, maybe the pro club. But
Yeah,
please welcome Shaun Soderling. Shaun, I really appreciate coming on.
no problem.
Obviously, you got the podcast going on, and that's really cool. And I've been able to listen to that. Obviously, the coaching, we got a lot in common. One thing that we actually have in common, which is really close to home, is that we actually lived in the same area for a little bit of period of time.
Yeah.
Um, not like I said to you when I sent you when we were talking. Not sure how a guy that you can go all these different places, how you end up in Midland, Michigan. That's like
I'll tell you, I'm looking right now at how I ended up in Midland, Michigan.
yeah. Well, happy
Although
what.
I just got a stare from it though.
Happy wife,
People
happy life.
people people can't see the stare I got, but
Yeah.
I'm sure that if you're married, you know what I'm talking about.
Oh yeah, you feel it. It's a feeling. We all get it, don't we?
Yeah,
Not married, but close enough. So,
for sure.
but yeah, Midland. It's actually funny because I've talked to a few people from Midland on here, and I hate on Midland because I'm from Bay City, and that's just what we do. It's a rivalry, but it is kind of funny. It was voted like the most boring city in the state of Michigan. So it's not necessarily the most appealing places for people to come to, especially when they're moving to Michigan. So, but
Yeah,
you had a little stay here,
yeah.
and obviously the weather is not the greatest. we,
No,
but you're not that far. I mean, Indiana. You said Indiana and stuff like that. Like
yeah.
that's
I'm 9 hours away from
so it's far enough to
Midland.
not get so much snow as us, huh?
Oh, absolutely. Like it was so before we moved up there. Um, so like where we live at is where we lived at before we moved to Michigan.
Okay.
And my wife is from Michigan, so she was constantly used to heavy weather and whatnot. And I remember when we first met, we both taught in Kentucky, and we were on a snow delay, or we had a snow day, and there was maybe like an inch and a half on the ground.
That's amazing.
And her dad, who's the superintendent in Midland, called her one day, and he was like, "Why are you answering your phone?" And we were in her apartment, and she was like, "Because I'm off." He's like, "Why?" She's like, "A snow day." He's like, "How much snow did you get?" She's like, "I think like a foot or like an inch."
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
he was like, "An inch?" And she was like, "Yeah, I'm like kind of getting accustomed to this." So we used to always joke that like we would go up to Michigan for Christmas for like a week and a half and get just like our fill of massive amounts of snow
Yeah,
in.
for sure.
And then we come back home and it would be sunny, like 45.
Ah,
And then we get like an inch of snow for like 2 days in February. So like it was always like we would get like the snow that we wanted during that time, and we'd be able to come back. And then during when we lived in Michigan, the snow was a whole different ball game for your boy. Like I just like it was
I'm trying to think. What years did you live in Michigan again?
the years we lived in Midland was 20 2016 through 18.
Okay, so
My I've got my almanac here.
there you
She's
go.
got a lot better memory than I do.
Well, to be fair, you just missed it because 2014 was probably the
Mhm.
worst year that I've ever dealt with.
Well, what's crazy was so I remember somebody saying 2014 had a bad winter,
Oh, it was the worst.
and when we got up there, my mother-in-law, I think she was just trying to lower the bar for me, was like, "Well, the Farmer's Almanac says that this is going to be the best winter because it's not going to be that bad." And I was like, "Yeah, but like your best winter may be the worst thing I've ever seen in my life."
That is true.
And then she was like, "Yeah, I can see that." She's like, "But it won't be that bad." And I was like, "Okay, holy cow, was it bad? At least in my end." And then I thought 2017's was, yeah, yeah. Like my wife said, like they had snow days in April.
Yep. It's the worst.
I can remember like getting ready for a game, and the other team called me saying like, "Hey, if you can bring a snow shovel," and I was like, "For what?" And they're like, "Because we're gonna have to shovel the field." And I was
That's
like, "What are you
amazing.
talking about, shoveling the field?" Like in Indiana, we would just say, "Nah, it's all right. Like we'll play another time." So that was like really interesting to me, like how here like we deal with rain a lot,
Right.
and like if you can get on a turf field, get on a turf field. If not, like you're gonna have to wait. But like that other element of weather was just so mind-boggling to me that I always joke with people. My last day or my last game coaching up there was on June 1st. I'll never forget this. We had a noon kickoff, and I had on two pairs of training pants with a pair of fleece pants over top of it, a hoodie, a scarf, a super thick sock hat, and a puffy Adidas Stadium coat. And my assistant coach was just laughing because like we knew we were moving. He's like, "Dude, I bet you are so happy to be going back home." And I was like, "You want to see this?" And then literally, I showed him a picture of my friends sent me text messages of them golfing back home in southern Indiana in t-shirt and shorts because it was like 75 degrees. I was like, "Dude, it's June 1st."
Yeah, it's
Like,
no, look, and you think that like us being in Michigan, we're just are like used to it or whatever. No,
yeah,
like I mean we're used to it, but we hate it just as much. It's the worst.
yeah.
Like
Well, my mother-in-law used to try to tell me, and my wife would try to tell me like, you get used to it. Like, once you're around, you get used to it. I never got used to it the whole time I was up there, and
it's a,
like I swore off snow blowers. I
yeah,
was like, no, like, come on, down here, like I can use a shovel. I'm all right. And I literally like made it all the way through until one day like my back just like went crazy out,
yeah.
and and my wife, and I don't think we knew at the time that we were moving. My wife was like, "Hey, like there's one at Lowe's on sale, like go get it." So I went and got it, blew all the snow out of our driveway and the sidewalk, and it stopped snowing the next day, and I've never used it since. So I'm fairly certain I'm one of 5 people in the big city of Evansville, Indiana, who has a snowblower, and
You're ready.
yeah. If that day ever comes, I'm gonna be making some guap in my subdivision for sure.
Oh, that is funny. That is really funny. One thing that I like to we've talked about on here, and actually I can segue this a little bit just because we talk about like pickup and like men's league and stuff like that, which is going to be very important to this channel because actually our men's league team will be on YouTube starting up this week, I believe.
Oh, that's super cool.
We're doing an indoor league and we're gonna be putting all the games, probably the highlights and stuff, and then like little commentary from me and like the other people on the team.
Do you watch Palmer's FC? Palmer's FC?
I've heard it, but I haven't
Oh,
watched
dude.
it.
If you watch it and watch like some of their old stuff from like 2 years ago, if you turn your men's league team into that, like with your YouTube stuff, I'll watch every day. I'll subscribe.
I mean, we got some characters on that team, so like
then yeah, you are definitely gonna like Palmer's FC.
yeah, for sure. And so that's kind of what I want, right? Like I want people to kind of get to see us. But we got the game in there too. We'll get the
Mm-hmm.
highlights, and I'll throw up the full game because we're gonna be using like the VO camera to record
You're
the game.
using a VO camera for men's league,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
dude.
It's gonna be
I
fun.
told man, Michigan men's league is, whoo,
Yeah, you.
y'all big time up there.
You have some stories about, obviously weren't here long, but you met some
Yeah,
people that we both know.
yeah.
And yeah, men's league's a different animal up here, isn't it?
It is, man. Like I was telling you before we were recording, the first game I went to within the first 5 minutes, all the tackles that we saw, well, I guess I could say attempted tackles.
Yeah, yeah,
My wife looked at me and was like, "You sure you want to do this?" And I was like, "Yeah, I think I can hop over these dudes." And um, I was playing in a game with a guy that we both know, Leaveview, from Nationals, in the Bay City area, and he, to me, he's a Michigan legend in my mind. Like I just he's like one guy that he's one of two guys that I can mention that I know their name, and literally everyone in Michigan soccer is like, oh yeah, like we know who that is.
He's pushed
And
all over.
Leave you, we were playing Saginaw, heated rivalry, Midland FC versus Saginaw,
That's a lot.
just 30 years of just blood and
Hatred.
and hatred and swearing and fist and stuff like that that I was not aware of before I
Yeah.
signed up. But it is what it is. And so we were playing them. It may have been I think it was my second year there because I think it was right before I left.
Okay.
Um, and there was a guy on their team, I'll just say significantly older than me, who just kept just getting in my business, talking trash, hitting me whenever I was around. And it's not like I was a factor in the game or anything, but like it must have been, it was on my shirt. So there was a ball that was coming in the air. I went up to go ahead it to play back. I'll name drop Kyle Jean's name. But I was trying to head a ball back over to Kyle, who was running through the middle. And I had the ball, but I just felt this like insane pounding going to like the side of my ribs. And I see this guy in like a kung fu with his leg up in the air as I'm going down. And I'm just like withering in pain. And this guy's running over, he tells me to get up, I'm not hurt. And the referee comes over, he's like, "Oh my God, are you okay?" I was like, this dude for the first time in his life got his leg above his belly button and just connect with my rib cage. It's like, no, I don't feel good. And I'm just like, I'm trying to, trying to get up, but it's hurting to kind of
Right.
move a little bit. And the referee was like, "Hey, take your time. Like, let's not rush this." Cause that's what I kept saying to that guys, like, we're in the over 30 league for a reason. Just relax. We'll leave you literally as this happens, shows up to the game.
That seems accurate.
This is second half. We're probably 15 minutes into the game or 15 minutes into the half, something like that.
That's amazing.
And Kyle kind of looks over and he comes over and he's like, "Do you need to get up now?" And I was like, "No, I'm gonna take my time." And he's like, "All right, good." And I turned my head, I see the corner of my eye, like leave you putting his boots on and stuff. And I was like, "Oh, okay, I get it. I get it." So I kind of like turn over, I get up, and the guy's still barking at me. And I was like, "Dog, like if you cracked my ribs, like it's gonna be worse than this. Like, come on, man. Like, stop talking." And it was at that moment I was like, "Man, that's the moment where I was like, I'm getting too old for this." And which, like I said, there's guys 20 years older than me out there. So Kyle's like, "Hey, you want Leave You to get you?" And I was like, "Yeah." So I'm walking off the field, Leave You comes on, and he just looks at me and goes, "Don't worry, I got you." And I was like, "All right, man." Like, whatever the number of the guy, I was like, "Yeah." I was like, "That's him." He goes, "Okay." So I get off to the side. Leave You sets the ball up for the free kick. It's probably 25, 30 out. Referee blows the whistle. Leave You strikes a freaking bomb to the back upper 90
Yep.
and just like destroys the netting. And soon as he does it and the referee blows the whistle, this massive lightning bolt comes down. Referee stops the game, gives it to us, and we won 1-0. So Leave You came up after, like, as soon as the game came, like, we were all going crazy because we won. Of course, I couldn't get my hands up in the air because it's like, oh my God,
Yeah,
my
right.
ribs hurt so bad. And Leave You comes over, he goes, "I'm giving you assist for that one." I was like, "Thanks, man. Thanks." I was like, "I will tell my kids about this one day. The greatest assist I've ever had in my
Oh,
life."
for sure.
Where Jesus himself got involved with a lightning strike.
Had to.
I've never seen anything like it. Like,
That's amazing.
the shot he hit was the best free kick I've ever seen. And this dude's like, he's not young.
He's 50s.
But he's not old, but he's not young. and he just hit this absolute banger that I've never seen before. I've never seen since. And then, for the power of the Almighty to put a lightning strike down, like he was saying himself, like it game over, like you're done.
Nothing better is happening. So
Yeah, yeah. And so I like to take pride in saying, my last game versus Saginaw, leave you got the win for us. I got the assist somehow, some way,
there you go.
by taking a rib shot. But no, man, it was Michigan Adult League. It was very entertaining, I guess, so to say. So now the thought of like with being able to watch your team on YouTube, I guess it's just the memory. Like I'll put my Midland FC jersey on every now and then, and those memories come back.
Yeah.
And sometimes I have to grab the side of my ribs, and just like, oh man.
But that
But
assist.
but that assist, man, like for real. I think that year, I bet I used more biofreeze in those 2 years
Oh
playing
yeah.
than I have in the other 34 of my life. But it was worth it, man. I had so much fun with those dudes playing. And they've always been open up to me about, hey, if you're ever back in town for a long time,
For sure.
we'll get you on as a guest. Like come out, because they won't let me give them my jersey back. They're like, no, like you're part of us now. And
That's
so
awesome.
I still rock it every now and then. And hopefully if COVID gets away and whatnot, I can make my way back up. And I'm going to try to make sure that I mark my calendar for a Saginaw game, because I kind of want to
You
relive
want to
that
do
one if
something in that
possible.
game,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
You've bought into the rivalry now. I love it.
I have. That's for sure. That's
That's
for
amazing.
sure.
So just a little background. So because it was a little bit sacrilegious because Leaveview and Nationals we don't mesh. He's actually a
Mm,
Bassa coach. He's
okay.
like he's the leading force in Bay City.
Gotcha.
He's doing good work there. But again, we're not in any of the cities. We're just
Mm,
like in the middle. But
yeah.
we're kind of considered a Saginaw. So like
Hmm.
we're viewed, you know.
Yeah.
Everyone hates Saginaw, right?
Yeah.
As
And
you are, even you. So
yeah, I'm like, I don't even know. Like, I would tell people all the time, like, I don't understand the hatred with Saginaw, but guess what? I'm in it.
I'm in.
Like, I picked a side. Well, I guess I picked a side. I think the side chose me,
Oh
but
yeah, well yeah.
um,
When he put his studs into your side is when you decide.
oh well. I'm like I was telling you when we got off the air, that first time walking in, stepping foot onto the game, that's when I knew what side
Yeah,
I was on.
yeah. You didn't have a choice just by putting that jersey
No,
on, and
no,
then
but Saginaw,
but
I love y'all. Don't worry, don't worry.
no for sure. And then leave you. So he is, yeah. I mean, he's mid to late 40s, maybe even 50s. This guy was, I don't know how well you knew him, but I mean, he actually played second division Bundesliga
Yeah.
back in the day. Like he,
Oh, he gave me the rundown of my first game with him.
yeah. Okay, so yeah.
He's like, let me tell you about me. I was like, all right, cool. And then he went off. He started going off about his professional career. And I was like, say less, my friend. Say less. Let me just get you the ball.
Yeah, we've had in like the Bay City area and like Saginaw area, we've had some crazy people that have come through like that. Like just you don't know, like they're
Yeah.
just like imports that like come in maybe for jobs or different things,
Yeah.
and they just find their way here, and it's like
I tell you what, man. Like Michigan soccer was really surprising to me.
yeah,
And I say that in a total good way. Like
for
it's
sure.
not like I didn't have a bar or a standard set up or anything, but I just know like coming from Indiana is known as a basketball state, but
For sure.
we're pretty rich in soccer tradition. I mean, Indiana University is by
Mhm.
far and away the best college soccer program in the country. Um, and where I live at in Evansville, we have one of the best mid-major schools,
Yeah.
University of Evansville, that I actually coached at for a while. And at one point, I mean, up until probably, maybe in the last 15, 20 years, it's probably changed, but Indiana versus Evansville was the number one, was considered the number one college soccer rivalry in the country.
Oh wow.
I think up until like the late '90s, where probably got a little bit more heated with, the Duke of Carolinas, the USC's, UCLA, stuff like that. But so a lot of it's just crazy how I never really thought much of Indiana being a soccer state, but as I got older, I started seeing it. And when I went to Michigan, so my first time in soccer experience with Michigan was I took a team up there from Evansville, and we ran through the Midland tournament, except for the fact that the last game, the semifinal, we we hit every part of the goal
Right.
except for where it needed to go.
Yeah, for sure.
We put 40 shots on this team, and we just could not score. I think it was somebody trying to tell us something. And so, that was really the only glimpse of Michigan soccer I had.
Right.
And then when I got up there, um, I reached out to George Hajay about coming on staff and whatnot. And I'm very thankful that he was just like, yes, like we'll get you set up and whatnot. And George really was kind of my he was, yeah, he was my dude when I was in Michigan.
Yeah.
We talked almost every day, and we talked, you know, soccer more than soccer. We talked about life stuff like that, and I'm very fortunate. He gave me a pretty solid team with Fusion, and it was a chance to be with a group of boys who, you know, they had the skills. There was just I don't know, I couldn't even tell you what it was that was missing, but you know, we were able to find that missing piece and just got these boys playing at lights out level. And man, like there was times where I was like, all right, like I got to size this up. Like we're doing well against these Michigan teams, but I got to do something. So I took them down to Crossroads in Indianapolis,
Oh yeah.
just because I knew like my former club was going to be there. I knew a bunch of the clubs that would be playing, and I was like, all right, like this will really tell us like, or will tell me like what, you know, Michigan soccer is really about. Because I mean, like Fusion's not the biggest club in the state of Michigan, but
Yeah.
like they got some good players.
Yeah, for sure.
And we played. Let's see, we played 3 games in Crossroads, and we won every game by minimum of 5. And I can remember like my friends who were there watching were like, dude, like this team's pretty good. And so it really kind of gave me like a glimpse of like, man, like this team is pretty solid. Cause, you know, we had a kid from oh my gosh, starts with a B. On the north in Detroit, I think.
Br-
Um
um,
Brighton.
Brighton. Okay.
Brighton. Nick Schrader played for. I was assistant coach at UE when Nick Schrader played for us.
Oh.
So I kind of knew a little bit about like Brighton in that
Yeah.
area. But man, I was taken away by it to where now like I'm super happy that kind of through the pandemic, and I'm sure we'll get to it at some point. But I got to meet Damon Amy from Delta
Yep.
College through it. And he and I were like midway through our conversation, and he's gone from a small town in Michigan you never heard of. I was like, well, where from? He's like, oh, Bay City. I was like, I know where Bay City is. And he was like, how do you know that? I was like, I go, because I lived in Midland for 2 years. And Dave and I have just gotten super, super close recently, into where now, you know, like we're trying to do something to where, you know, he's got some players that you know, we're looking at for Brescia to hopefully kind of make like a little pipeline,
Yeah, that'd be great.
because you know there's quality kids up there,
Yeah.
you know, and if we can give them a chance to come down and do some things at a little bit maybe of a bigger scale, I guess. You know, and I was joking with one girl that is going to Delta. She chose Delta over us, but I told her, you know, when you get done to Delta, you still have to come to Brescia. You know, I told her, I was like, look, like we're gonna be able to give you some warmer weather and not as
Yeah,
much snow.
that is true.
Um, so yeah, man, Michigan soccer, like it's. I definitely not saying I didn't respect it before, but I definitely like I have a big love and respect for Michigan soccer.
Yeah, I think I mean, to me, like obviously I played, and I didn't play at like a good level until later on in my like I guess travel career.
Yeah.
I went and played for Vardar. I'd played for Bassa
Oh, cool.
my whole life, and then I went and played for Vardar, and that was a totally different animal because yeah, my Bassa team, we ran through everybody like in the local
Mm-hmm.
leagues and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
and I'm like, oh, like this we're pretty good, you know what I mean? And then
Yeah.
like because you don't know, and then but then you'd have the odd tournament where you'd play like who was Kingdom, who's like who was at the
Yeah.
time was like the really good Kalamazoo, especially on the boys end. And then you know we played like at the time I'm trying to think like Carpathia Kickers, like those are the
Mm-hmm.
team like those are the teams that we play against and we'd lose. And it was because like and like then you'd find then like years later I'm finding out it's like oh those aren't even the best teams
Yeah.
in the state. It was like playing for this Vardar team, which was vastly better than my like local team, right?
Yeah.
And like we were good and we were able to play those teams and beat some of those teams that I would lose to. But it was like, oh wait, Michigan's actually like all right
Yeah.
at this thing. Like
And you mentioned my favorite club name in the state of Michigan was the Carpathia Kickers.
yeah, that's a decent one, isn't
The
it?
first time I saw that name, I was like, "Are we going to like the Middle East, like in a like
Isn't that amazing?
throwback in a time machine?" And they were a quality side. I definitely remember the Carpathia
Yeah.
Kickers. I
Uh,
couldn't tell you where that's at,
I couldn't even tell
but
you that,
I
so
I
don't worry about
remember I do remember playing them.
it. Yeah, it was funny. We actually, I remember for Vardar, we played Carpathia in, actually, I'm pretty sure it was at the Crossroads tournament.
Mm-hmm.
Funny enough, we played them at the Crossroads, played them in the semifinal. It's like we came all the way to Indiana
Yeah.
to play a Michigan team,
Yeah.
and so like, but that's what it is. Like Michigan, you see the best teams in Michigan are not playing in Michigan a lot of times because
Yeah.
they really are like top level teams and they do really well
And you kind of got to, I mean, especially like in that college showcase instance, like
yeah
with Crossroads, you know, and it's nothing against anything in Michigan, but I mean, we tell kids all the time, like, you're going to have to, teams are going to have to travel,
Yeah, for sure.
outside their norm or their local to be seen. You've got, how many teams from all over the country head to Disney every winter for Disney
Yeah.
Showcase. You got how many teams go to Crossroads, how many teams go to Surf Cup, how many teams go down to the Rally Showcase.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just if some of these schools that you want to be seen by, I mean, you're going to have to leave the state, and that's, I did the same thing with my Midland team as I did with my Indiana team. So like with my Indiana teams, when we go to showcase, I'll pick a couple colleges in that local area where that showcase is at, and I'll take them there with the idea of like, okay, my kids may not want to go to the school, but there may be something about this school that they like and say, hey, like, I
Right.
like this, but I just don't like this location. Or hey, they don't have my major, but I like this thing. So now when I find my school, like it's got to have this. And so I did that with, like I said, I did it with my Indiana boys. I took them, well, when we kept to Midland, my assistant, who was from Sterling Heights.
Yep.
Is that the name of it?
Yep.
Sterling Heights. Jeremy Clark, got to give him a shout out. He played at Michigan State. He was their goalkeeper.
Okay. Yep.
And he was like, hey, he's like, yeah, we can do a tour at Michigan State. And I was like, cool. And Kale Wasserman was there at the
Yep.
time. So we got a hold of Kale, and Kale's like, yeah, bring the boys on campus. So we brought the boys on campus, and got to see the complex, got to go to the locker room and whatnot. But then I also took them on our way to Midland from Lansing. We stopped at Alma College,
Yeah.
and we stopped there because I had never heard of it. I just happened to like look up
That's
like,
fair.
hey, schools near Midland, and just saw Alma College and was like, hey, like, let's go give it a shot. And the cool thing about Alma College was, on that team that I took up there, I had 6 boys who went on to play college soccer.
Oh wow.
And I know for a fact that 4 of them found things in Alma that they really liked and
That's
said like,
awesome.
hey, like, I don't want to come to Alma,
That's fair.
but
That's
I
also
want
fair.
my school to have like these things that we saw there. And so when I coached at Midland and we played at Crossroads, one of those boys who had happened to be on that Indiana team that came to Michigan and saw Alma said, hey, I want something similar to this. He just recently graduated, but he played at Marion University in Indianapolis.
Oh,
So
okay.
when our boys, and I had another one that played at Anderson University, which is just north of Indianapolis. So when I brought the Michigan boys down for the tournament, we kind of did a deja vu, and I took the boys to the Anderson University campus and the
Right.
Marion University campus. And, they were the same way, like, like, some of them are like, I don't really want to leave Michigan, but I like that Marion has this, this, and this. And I like that Anderson has this, this, and this. So it's just kind of that eye-opening experience for them, because I felt like in my time there, kids would always talk about Hope and Spring Arbor and, good quality programs, and nothing against them. But it's kind of the same thing here. Like the only thing kids talk about here is Notre Dame and IU.
Right.
And sometimes they'll talk about University of Evansville, and locally here, kids will talk about University of Southern Indiana. And the kind of thought is like, those are the only schools they can play at. And it's like,
Right.
no, there are so many more schools. So it was just getting that exposure, not just for the kids to be seen by these other schools, but like to let them see other schools, just go, oh yeah, like, again, I may not like the location, but I do like this school has that.
Right. And that's what I feel like is the biggest thing. So like when I've been talking to like my older girls, so like they're U17 2004s, I've been talking to them, and it's like, look, like, yes, the soccer is important, yes, the education's important, but like beyond anything, like the first thing that you need to know is like, is that a place you want to be for the next 4 years?
Yeah.
And so
If soccer stops, do you want to stay there?
right, exactly, because like if it's not a place that you can see yourself being for 4 years, or you're gonna be miserable, no matter how good the education or the soccer is, it's probably not going to last, or it's not going to be
Yeah.
it's not going to be a good experience. So, no, I think
Yep.
that's great to like give them that opportunity to be on the campus and see those things. And it's like you said, like you don't have to go to this school, but
Mhm.
there's 100 more schools just like this somewhere else that,
Absolutely.
and we can figure that out. And so that I think that's really cool. Staying on the college topic, obviously, I do, obviously being the coach of Brescia, but before that, you said you worked at Evansville, and then I think Elderson Brodus. I said I probably slaughtered that name, but
No, it's just Broadus.
oh, so I wasn't that far off. Okay,
The
fair
way I
enough.
always reminded people is, so Snoop Dogg's real name is Calvin Broadus.
That is true.
So
That's
Alderson Broadus.
there you go. Yeah, they have a little bit of street cred, right?
For sure, for sure.
What were those like? What were those experiences like? Obviously, because it wasn't the same as being the head. I know, like at the last one at Broadus, you were on the men's side, doing like a lot of like the. I'm trying to think of how I want to. I guess like the
Recruiting
recruiting.
and social media content.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So those are a little bit different experiences. So how did that kind of morph you into where you're at now, being at Brescia?
Man, so I wouldn't have been at any of these three places if it wasn't for the 12 years coaching high school before that.
Okay.
I spent, I'm trying to do the math here. Math was, I was a broadcasting major.
Fair.
I spent, of the 9 of those 12 years, I was a head coach. And then I spent 3 years as an assistant, which, looking back is probably one of my favorite memories. So I start off just graduated college at the age of 20, and took a high school varsity job with a girls team, and I enjoyed it. And I had the opportunity to change, not profession, but just change companies. I went to work for ESPN Radio,
Oh wow.
which was going to allow me to move back home, to Evansville. And so, I couldn't say no to it. And while I was down here on the side, um, I worked for a soccer retail store
Oh,
with a buddy of mine who was a head coach at a high school in Indiana. And he was like, man, he's like, are you coaching? And I was like, no. I was like, I don't know like who to contact or anything like that. I'm just kind of, I don't know what I'm going to do. And he's like, hey, he's like, I got a buddy of mine that, I know is looking for a coach for his club. And I was like, all right. He's like, it's in Kentucky over in Henderson, which is just across the bridge from
right.
Evansville. So he gave me the guy's number, Scott Wilson. I called him up. He's like, hey, he's like, I got this U14 team, that we're looking for a coach. And he's like, you can come over, and he's like, and run a session. That'll kind of like be your interview. And I was like, okay, cool. So I spent the whole day just getting myself like psyched up. Like, I know I didn't sell anything that day radio wise. And I just was like focused on this training session. And I got over there, and had it such a great time. And I think I did like 2 weeks worth of sessions, because they offered me to stay there after that first session.
Right.
And I did like 2 weeks. And Scott was also the head coach of the varsity girls team at Henderson County High School, which is, I mean, just a traditional powerhouse in the
Okay.
state of Kentucky when it comes to high school soccer. I believe, if I remember correctly, I want to say they're like the third largest school in the state.
Oh wow.
Um, and so I, I I remember taking the job, and when I told him that I would come on and be an assistant and be the JV coach, I remember telling him, I was like, I don't know how to be an assistant. Like, I've been a head coach since I was 19 years old,
Right.
like, or 18 years old, coaching club. Like, I don't know what to do. And I'll never forget this. And I think it really helped shape me. Was he said, I don't want you to be an assistant. I want you to do what you do. That's why I'm bringing you here.
Right.
And Scott would always go kind of above and beyond in the media and saying like, hey, like, I feel like we have 2 head coaches on the staff, and I think that's what kind of sets our program apart from others, like why we're winning some of these games and why we're doing the things that we're able to do is because we have 2 guys with head coaching experience. And he would also say I'm significantly more new school than he is. He takes a lot of pride in being the older guy, but I would bring a lot of like new school mentalities or new
Right.
school things to it. um, and Scott always tells people like how much he learned from me. I'm like, dude, you didn't learn nothing from me. Uh, and it was year 3. That was my first time coaching a team that was successful. That was the crazy part. Like, I coming into a team that won districts every year, always made it to regional finals, been to the state championship and stuff like that. Like, I didn't know what that was like because
Right.
the previous high school I was at in Indiana was a super, super small, uh, super tiny school, and, we'd win some games, but as soon as we'd play teams outside of our county, we'd get it pretty handed to us. The club team I coached, we got pounded constantly. So I didn't know what it was like. And that was probably the best experience for me, was to learn what it's like to be successful and see the things that, goes into a successful
For
program,
sure.
to where by year 3, Scott, I think he kind of known a little bit beforehand, but he was like, hey, he's like, if you want to go somewhere and do your own thing again, he's like, go for it. He's like, I'm not going to be mad. And lo and behold, Vincent's Lincoln High School, which is in the city where I went to college at and played, their boys varsity head coaching job was open. And so just kind of took my shot and said, hey, we'll see what this does. And if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, we'll figure out what's going on. And I got that job. And I was super pumped, again, to be a head coach, but also, to kind of go over to the boys side too. Because at the time I had just coached girls, except for a couple club teams, I coached the boys. And I took over a really young team that just needed to learn how to win. And I thought, well, this is going to be a win-win situation because I just learned how to win myself.
Right.
And now if I can pass that stuff on to this team, where are we going to go? And man, what a group that was. My wife and I actually were just on a weekend getaway last weekend. And with this team, like, we always think about this group of boys that I got to work with. We end up being the highest scoring team of all time in the state of Indiana, with 154 goals.
Jesus.
Um, we, uh, just that group, how successful they were, and things that we did with that program, um, really kind of helped me like know like, hey, this is what I want to do. Because at the time, like I was, at Lincoln, I was substituting, but at Henderson County, I actually was working in the school.
Oh.
So I was like, oh, like I want to be a teacher so I can coach all the time. But it was like when I got to Lincoln, I was like, this is all I want to do. This is all I want to do. And I kept telling my wife and I weren't married at the time. And I would tell her time, like, I just want to coach. Like, forget this teaching stuff and forget it. Like, I just want to coach. How do I do that? Um, and I really got big into social media, which is really the only reason why I think I have anything I have in my life. Um, I really used social media to really kind of project this little bitty high school team in the state of Indiana, because I can remember going to um, the coaches convention. It was in Kansas City in 2008, and or not 2008, a couple years after that, 2011, I think it was. Um, and I had on an Alice's soccer shirt and just walking through the exhibit hall, and my assistant was with me, and one of the guys I ended up coaching with at the University of Evansville. And I bet in that exhibit hall in the first hour, I had 13 people come up, goes, "Hey, is that the Alice Soccer from Indiana?" And I was like, yeah. And I was like, how do all these people know who we are? But like people within our town don't know who we are. But that all changed the next year. Like people really took notice. The state took notice. Um, and Mike Jacobs, who's now the technical director at Nashville SC in the MLS, he was the head coach at University of Evans at the time. I had worked their camps like since I had started working at Henderson County. Um, and my wife was actually taking a praxis test for, I believe, her administrator's license. And we were in town, and she's taking her test, and Coach Jacobs called me. He's like, "Hey, like, stop by the office sometime. We want to talk to you about possibly coming on staff." And I was like, "I'm 5 minutes from campus. I'll come over right now." And went over there, and they mentioned about the work I'd done with Lincoln, and they really were intrigued by the social media and like getting a following and getting people to follow along with what they were doing.
That's
And
really cool.
that's something Mike wanted to bring to university. So I said yes because I was in a moment where I was like, do I want to coach in college, or like, do I just want to keep being this high school coaching guy? Because I found myself like making fun of like the high school lifer guys. And I'm like, oh, like that's going to be me. Like, I'm just going to coach high school the rest of my life. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with
Right.
that.
For sure.
But I was just like, is that who I'm going to be? Or like, am I going to try to keep going higher and higher? And so, I didn't think I was ready to coach in college because I still was like, man, like I'm still like at the time I was like, I think I'm too young still. Um, but I jumped on that and just soaked in all that Division I experience and was just like, okay, like I have a sales background, I have a marketing background, and I just fell in love with the recruiting process. Just everything about recruiting, I was all about it. And I realized that I had talent using social media to help with recruiting. And I was doing a camp. We had camp at UE, and Scott Phipps, who at the time was at Rockhurst University, who's now the head coach at AB,
Yep.
we all went and had dinner one night. All the coaches who were at camp, we were all having dinner, and Scott and I were the last two left. Everybody else had already left, went back to campus, and we had a long conversation about like where we wanted to go. It was really eye opening for me to make me realize like, hey, like I think there are other places I'd like to be at. And because he just said, like, I know what you can do recruiting wise. Like, man, he's like, I think that there's stuff bigger for you out there. And I was like, oh, that'd be so cool. And, I think it was like 2 months later, he got the head coaching job at Alderson Broadus. And he called me up first thing. I was like, hey, he's like, I'm taking this job. Let's do this. And because he feels like he's the best recruiter in the country, I feel like I'm the best recruiter in the country. Um, and I don't really mean I'm the best recruiter,
Right.
but I just like, I know like that's something I'm good at.
Yeah.
Um, and so we were able to come there and take over a team that just was I don't even know how to explain it, but luckily between Coach Phipps, myself, and John Friedel, who actually just took the job, I believe it was Colorado Mesa, I think is the school's name. He was at Eastern New Mexico before that. John Friedel is one of the best trainers I've ever seen in my life. Like his sessions are on point. He's so good at what he does, and he's just such a humble, quiet dude that like nobody. And he's also the most handsome man in soccer. I don't care what anybody says.
Olivier
If
Giroud.
you no, you has nothing on John Friedel.
Wow.
Has
All right.
nothing on him.
All right.
He may be taller. He may be taller than John, but John is the man.
All right. Fair enough.
Um, and we had some big success at AB conference championship. Our third season there, which was we weren't expecting even to get close to until like year 5 or 6. We thought we may get to the conference championship by year 4. We made it our first year, lost in PKs. And to win it the third year was awesome. We had a great group of guys, some national teamers, a couple guys that currently play for the Cosmos, a couple guys who are playing for their national teams. Just a super good group to be around.
For sure.
And it really opened up my eyes to like, hey, like I've got full reign of our social media content. I've got full range of recruiting. In our school, made a change on their women's program and brought over one of our assistants. And they made our men's head coach the recruiting coordinator for the women's program. And kind of they kind of made me, I guess, kind of like a scout type thing,
Yep.
which basically like I would do the recruiting for them. And so I started doing a lot more camps, a lot more functions on the women's side, because we wanted to bring in the same type of players that we were bringing in for the men's team.
Of course.
And I just got to know so many coaches on the women's side, and I was still at AB on the men's side when I realized that 99% of my friends coaching in college are all coaching on the female side. Um, and they kept telling me just from our camps, like, man, you need to come over, you need to do this, you need to do this, and just come to the women's game. And um, my little girl, I can remember her watching the last Women's World Cup, and just the way she was looking at the U.S. Women's National Team players. She's got the posters on our wall, and I just thought to myself, like, man, like if I could give her that without her having to watch TV, like if I could get her a team that she could just go to and be around a big group of females that could empower her and kind of be an inspiration to her, like that's the ultimate like gift as a father,
Yeah, for sure.
and so and at convention, not this past one, but in last January of 2020, before the world changed as we all know it,
Yeah.
had some conversations with some people at convention. There were some, the idea was to go back to D1 as an assistant. Um, and so like I had some opportunities that I was looking at. And my family had just moved back from Michigan, and I was like, I really don't want to move again.
Right.
But like if it's good, my wife is so awesome and so supportive. She's like, look, like if we have to for a year where we got to leave after school on a Friday and come hang out for a weekend, like we can do that for a year. But like like just whatever's going to make your career better. And out of nowhere, Bresh University popped up 45 minutes away from my driveway, and as a head coach. And kind of studying the NAIA and seeing how things go. And I just thought, man, like for my personality and my outgoingness, NAIA recruiting quotations rules,
Yeah.
really benefit me and just like my outgoingness. And it was an opportunity um, to recreate what we did at Alders and Broadus. I mean, we took over a team that had not been good in a while, and we were able to get things turned around towards the really getting to the conference championship that first year was kind of the big turnaround for us because we were able to bring in some really good players the next year. So I had that experience
Right.
of being with a team that was needing a turnaround. And if you look at the high schools that I worked at as a head coach, it was also the same thing. The places needed a turnaround. And my friends who aren't soccer related like to call me the Chip Gaines of soccer coaching because I guess I'm a fixer upper is kind of like my thing. Like I just get so addicted to it. And so like I said, I saw an opportunity at Brescia that was very similar to AB, and I felt I had some experience in that. And if I could bring that to kind of a local school that was near me and my family, and we wouldn't have to move. We could stay where we were at. Was too good to turn down. And even some of those D1 schools that I had chatted with, they all were like, "Man, you are crazy," but we can tell you're passionate about this place, and we're going to support you. So when Brescia made the announcement that I was going to be the head coach, I mean, just the Randy Waldrum, Becky Burley, just all these people that put out a tweet to the school about like how pumped they were for hiring me, and I just was so like taken back by it and so appreciative of. And I'm been hitting the ground running. Sometimes I have to pull myself back a little bit and say, hey, like, take a break. um but I absolutely love it. We did play this fall. And I can't tell you why we did, but we did. And a lot of people would look at our team going 0 for 10 or 0 and 11 and be like, oh my gosh. But I never once got like super mad during a game, because I
Right.
just knew, like, you know I only brought in two of the 7 players who came in. And so I just knew, like, hey, like, I got to continue bringing in my kids, develop the kids that we have here, and then I can start getting upset about results.
Yeah.
And so I just really put an emphasis on, okay, what are the years I'm going to be able to bring in? And our 2021 class getting ready to come in is top notch. Like, they're really going to set kind of the standard for what a recruiting class for Brescia is going to look like, going forward. And, I don't know a team that can go 0 and 11 that other schools are talking really, really good about. And like, man, like, they're going to be good. Like, nobody goes 0 and 11
Right.
and teams are like, oh yeah, like, things are going to go really awesome over there. Like, we can't wait to watch. So yeah, that too has me excited. Like, this is the place I should be at.
Right.
Just because I think the school deserve it. I think the local area, Owensboro, Kentucky, I think they deserve a quality program. We've got Kentucky Wesleyan there, who does some good things at the D2 level. But the most important thing is, I think these players and the alumni from our program deserve the success that this program deserves. And I use the phrase the sisterhood a lot, and we wear it on our shirts, and we have it all over our social media pages. That's who we want to make proud, is that sisterhood. And it's a work in progress, and it's given me a lot more gray hairs than what I'd like to admit. But I'm so excited. Like I said, if it wasn't for my experience at the high school level, I would have never gotten to the college level. And if it wasn't for my experiences at University of Evansville and Outer Sombratus, I don't think I would have gotten to Brescia. But I also, as crazy as it sounds, I have to give the podcast a shout out, because
Yeah.
the people that I've gotten networked with from starting the podcast, from starting the Twitter chat, was another big reason why I think where I am now, just because I have Randy Waldrum, who's a mentor of mine, and we can text and you know push ideas or things like that. And
Right.
Becky Burley as well, and Adrian Sorensen is at Delta College, San Joaquin in California. Robert Williamson, assistant at Brookhaven. Here's these coaches who, I mean, hell, Leslie Gallimore, who just retired from Washington. Now she's in charge of the Girls Academy League as the commissioner. Like, I tell them all the time. Anytime they text me or call me, I say, I'm like, there's no reason you should have my number.
Right.
But they do, and they offer their support, and that's kind of cool to be able to know. I think our players enjoy that, because they know, like, when they walk in, I kind of have like this. I have like a shrine to my family on one wall. I have like my soccer shrine of like people I've met, things like that. But on my wall where like my TV's at, where I do my recruiting off of, um, is a picture of me and all of my coaching network. Like, any person I'm close with coaching, I've made sure I've taken a picture with them. I've got these frames up, and some of our players know who some of these coaches are, and they're like, how how do you know them? And I'm like, soccer chat.
Yeah.
And everybody gets a kick out of. I have a picture of me and Jill Ellis,
Oh wow.
where I had her sign. A good friend of mine went to the World Cup in France, and sent me and my daughter some flags from the
Oh
crowd.
wow.
And Jill Ellis signed the flag for me. I got a frame for it with my picture and her in it. And anytime people look at that, I always say, like, that was the day Jill Ellis told a group of people that I was her bestie. Um, and just like stuff like that. It's so crazy. Like, I convention always makes me look back, because like so many people like I get to chat with and talk to, and I'm just like, how do these people? What? I'm just this little dude from the middle of nowhere in the
Right.
Midwest, and here I am connecting these people. So again, if it wasn't for, I'm a work of just where I've been at and the experiences and the people that I know. Like I will proudly admit that. I will tell people like I don't think I'm that great of a coach. Like I work really hard. You know, I guess you know, I know what my strengths are,
Yeah,
and you know, I may not be the most tactical person that there is, but like, you know, I can play checkers. I'm not a chess player, but I can play checkers. It's probably the worst thing ever to say in coaching. I don't play chess, I play checkers. But
it's all
um,
right.
you know, but I just like I've always said, you know, if you surround yourself with good people who believe in you or who will help educate you, you're going to get wherever you want to go. And that's really why I started just soccer chat in general, was to get this connection and build this community of coaches, no matter what level they are. And, you know, to see all the people now that follow us and, you know, who all they're connected with, it's the same connections I've got. And they all say the same thing. Like, how do these people have my number? Like, how are they get in contact with me? And,
Right.
um, it's just it's such a cool thing. And there's a group, I think it's like Michigan Soccer Central or something like that on Twitter.
Yep.
um Man, they give us so much love every week, and I've never met the people that run that account, but man, like they give us so much love, and they'll reach out to me every now and then with some questions or some thoughts. And you know, that's just it's such a cool thing to be a part of. And again, I just think to myself like, why me? But you know, it is what it is, I guess.
For sure. And I mean, I think for me, that's one of the biggest thing, and I think it's almost one of the lost things. I think it's is like the collaboration of coaches,
Yeah.
like within the same circle and outside of each other's circle, is like,
Hmm.
and the convention is the convention. And like I haven't actually been myself. I'll be honest. And it's something I want to do. It was something
Next year, Kansas City, you're going. You're
I'm
going to be on
I'm
Podcast Row, okay?
I'm gonna be there. I'm gonna be there. For sure.
Podcast Row, we'll make sure they get you a spot.
All right. I'll have your number by then, so we'll be good.
I let's just say I know some people.
Yeah, I would imagine. I would imagine.
Well,
So
I mean, the big joke is people. I mean, even United Soccer coaches will say like, when we started Soccer Chat, I begged like every week. I would tweet something out like, "Let us do a live show from convention. Like, just give us one of the lecture halls. Let us get a guest and let us just have fun."
yeah,
And it caused Jeff Van Dusen to say, "Okay, like there's got to be something we can do with this." And they thought about like Media Row at the Super Bowl,
yeah.
and he was like, okay, like, you know, we always have Sirius XM, you know, or Sirius FCXM always broadcast from there. Well, why don't we do this podcast thing? So he reached out to me. I was like, all right, how do we do this? And I was like, that's a really good question, because I don't know.
I'm an
And
idea guy, not a plan
yeah,
guy.
yeah, I can come up with it, but I can't always say I can come through it. So the first one we did was in Chicago. It was the first year they had Podcast Row, and it was absolutely incredible. Then last year in Baltimore was the second one. It got a little bit bigger, and I know we kind of planned for a really big one this year in Anaheim. It
Yeah.
just, you know, it wasn't meant to be. But you know, Jeff and I kind of talking recently. We're literally like, the day the convention ends, like the next day, we're already talking about, you know, what could we do for next year. And I think podcast will be even bigger in Kansas City in 2022.
Oh,
So
for
we'll have to
sure.
make sure to get your show submitted so we can get you out there and get more people to follow you.
I love that for sure. And it goes back to what I'm saying, right? Like the collaboration of coaches is like
Yeah.
this stuff. Like it's I think for me, like hearing like your kind of like journey through like high school is kind of crazy, because like I've always thought like kind of probably the way that you thought a little bit, like when you like make the joke about like high school lifers, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
high school is not. I think like I don't ever think of high school as being like a stepping stone to the next step. It's
Yeah.
it's kind of like a cul-de-sac. You're just there,
Yeah.
right? Like and
Yeah.
and it's not true, right? It's kind of like what you make of it. And like I think
Yeah.
by kind of branching out and connecting with different people, anything can be a stepping stone as long as you are putting in like the right
For sure.
work and you're meeting different people and you're kind of willing to go outside of your own circle and different things like that. So
And in the high school game, like, don't get it twisted. Like, I love high school. Like, right before I took the Brescia job, I was actually teaching at my alma mater,
oh, that's
and
amazing.
I am, you know, I am the biggest school spirit fanatic you'll ever see. Like homecoming week is my jam. Like, that's the one thing I really kind of miss. Like, although Brescia did it this year, they did dress up days, except for the fact that we were traveling all week
Oh
for
man.
road games, so I didn't get to participate. But like, you know, like for high school stuff, like I would dress up for homecoming weeks.
Oh
You know, I'd
yeah.
get involved in pep assembly, stuff like that. I would sell soccer t-shirts at lunchtime. We would always get these we would get these fan section shirts made, or we get like I stole from Notre Dame the shirt they do every year with
Yeah,
the
yeah,
schedule on it. We did that while I was at Lincoln, and I'd go and sell these gimmicks at the lunchroom, and like kids would love it, and it was so cool because you would see more and more kids in the hallways wearing soccer shirts. And because we put the schedule on it, they would always be able to see if they were walking in front of somebody or behind somebody. Oh yeah, there's a game today. And it was just it's like that whole thing about high school. Like I love that, and there is a part of me that misses that. I miss being like granted, I'm on campus every day,
right,
but I mean, other than practice, you may not see your team every single
hundred
day.
percent.
As compared to depending on the size of the high school you're in, you may see your kids every single day, and they may be in your classes. But also just that like hometown spirit
Yeah,
stuff, like the kids like they're from there, so they know they represent that. As compared to in college, like the kids aren't from here, and
no,
a majority of them aren't from here, so there's really no attachment other than like, yeah, I'm coming to play for the school. Again, like the people who are like high school coach lifers, like kudos to you.
yeah, for sure.
And like I said, there's a lot of things about high school soccer that I absolutely love.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, I loved and it's funny. I loved high school too, right? Like I loved being a part of the thing. You get this natural connection, right? Like this is my hometown, this is my
Mm-hmm.
school. You know, it is different than college, where like yeah, you can go back to like an alumni thing for college and stuff, and people get close to that. But I like it's something different about high school.
Yeah, and I've always said, and this recently changed, but I had always said when I first started coaching in college and when I got to even out or Sombratus, I always said if my high school job came open, Boonville High School in Boonville, Indiana, I think the name makes it sound exactly the way it is.
That's
So like
amazing.
that'll do that. I always said if that job came open, that if they offered it, I would take it. And a lot of my friends just like they were like, "You're coaching college?" I was like, "Yeah." I was like, "But to coach your alma mater and like bring like I'm definitely known more as a coach than I was as a player. Like I was not a fantastic player by any means. I don't think I ever got good until college because my high school
I feel
coach would
that.
always get mad at me about how good I was in college, but I wasn't that good in high school. Um, and so, I always thought that it would be cool to kind of bring like all these connections I've made and these things that I've learned back to my hometown, which isn't the biggest soccer factory in the world.
Yeah, for sure.
And I just always thought that was cool. And actually, when we lived in Michigan, the boys coach had resigned. And as soon as they made the post that the boys coach had resigned, within 5 seconds, they made another post that they just moved the JV coach up to varsity.
Uh,
And I was just kind of like, what? And I reached out to a friend of mine who works for the school corporation. And I was like, hey, I was like, when was the boys soccer job open? And she's like, I didn't know it was. I was just like, I don't know. I was like, this is so crazy. And I had some friends that I graduated school with who like their kids played. And they're like, hey, like, why didn't you apply for this job? And I was like, I didn't know it was open.
yeah.
And so, I just recently taught there. Like we moved back from Michigan. I ended up teaching there. Um, and I had lunch with the girls coach, Adam Wadsworth, and we would talk soccer a lot,
Yeah.
except about prim teams because he doesn't like a good team. Um, and
Wow.
we talk ideas, and he'd be like, man, he's like, dude, like, there's nobody who brings that knowledge to our programs. And I was like, whatever I can do to help, like, just like ask me and I'll send you a lesson plan or I'll send you whatever. Um, and so like I had a couple of the soccer boys like were in my class and they would ask me questions. I'd answer it for them. And I had a wall. I had all my coaching friends in college send me their team posters. I put it like all along my wall. So, we had University of Florida, Utah, Oregon
Right.
State, UCLA, Pittsburgh, all these schools. And the soccer players would just be like, why aren't you coaching here? I was like, I don't know. Like maybe I'm just here to be your teacher. Um, and I think my time being there as a teacher, I think that because somebody asked me today in my mind, I think that ship has sailed, to where I don't think I would do that. And I do think that my high school time is like officially done. Like it was always in the back of my mind, like, hey, like I could go back to that and like I
Yeah.
would really enjoy it. But I really think that ship has sailed for me at this moment in time because I'm not getting any younger
Yeah.
by any means, and um, I'm afraid that I would get back into it like around the time that my kids would be wanting to play, like or play for their high schools, and I don't think that's something that I want to do because I'm already missing. So I mean, my kids are only 6 and 3, but like I'm already missing so much stuff of
Yeah.
theirs that um, I can woefully admit that I think that ship has sailed.
Fair enough. And like for me, like high school, like I I would love to bring anything I can to like the high school team. But like at the same time, it's funny. Like I say how much I loved it. I loved high school, and I did enjoy my time playing high school soccer. But like looking back, and I don't know, like as like a from like the coaching perspective, for me, like especially now, and I kind of knew this before, but like high school soccer is fine, but like I guess for like college, like players that are going to college, like it's still not high school soccer for me. Is still not at a point where like it makes the most sense all the time for players.
I mean, and it depends on your high school
It really
too. I
does.
mean, we've got one here in Evansville that is a freaking powerhouse called Evansville Memorial,
Okay.
and I can't. I mean, I don't know how many state titles they've won in my lifetime in 36 years. I mean, it's up there. They have to have at least 10 minimum. I would say minimum 10 state championships,
Oh
and
wow.
they've won a ton just in the last 15 years. They are, I mean, they're ranked in the top 5 every year nationally.
Oh wow.
Um, and so it's just there are definitely programs out there,
Yeah, for
high
sure.
school programs that like you could put them up against club teams
Yeah. No, absolutely.
and some of the top club teams in your state, and they probably might get pounded. And the other thing too, that like the thing that makes a Memorial so good, and it's what really kind of made my Lincoln team so good as well, was we had like some really really good soccer players. We had of a starting 11, like I had like 5 or 6 really good soccer players.
Right.
I would say like 6, and then we had a couple guys out the bench who also played like club and played year round. But it was those pieces that like 5 or 6 in the starting 11 who weren't soccer players, but were just insane
Yeah,
athletes,
for sure.
just made our team just work so well. And that's the thing about Memorials. Like, yeah, they got kids on our team every year who go to a Power Five school. They've got probably 2 or 3 kids every year who will go to play to a Power Five school. But then they'll have these like guys who they just pick up from like the basketball team or pick up from the golf team or whatever.
Yeah.
And these kids will be all state players just because of how good like what they do with their programs. So it's one of those things. It's really hit and miss. Like I mean, there's college coaches who, like a good friend of mine, Nick, who's on our who's on soccer chat with me. Nick thrives at high school games. Like he'll go to high school games if they're in the area or if he can get to it to go recruit, because he does find like a good amount of his kids from there.
Oh wow.
But like every coach is like hit and miss, and I've always kind of said that too. Like kids will ask me about, oh, do high school things mean anything to you? And I do, and I say like sometimes it does. Like if your team is like at Evansville Memorial, like yeah, I will definitely check it out because those teams are really really good. But it's so hard that like you could go see a kid who's just absolutely phenomenal for his club team, and you go watch his high school team play, and his high school team is garbage, and they're playing against a garbage team.
Yeah.
You're going to be like, well, is this even the kid that I want to bring in? Like,
Yeah.
this isn't the kid that I saw in the highlight film. It's so hit and miss. But I think like Indiana really had a big, like, we've always been big high school soccer, but like what really kind of helped in a way, because at first, like the whole DA thing hurt where kids couldn't do both.
Yep.
And there were so many kids after, I want to say it was like year 2, so many kids were like, screw this. Like, I want to play for my high school team. And we saw all these kids leaving the DA to come back and play high school soccer in Indiana. And the talent levels of teams just went through the roof.
For sure.
So, I mean, you got to think like between, this is just for Indiana, and I'm sure every state's different, but like we've got like we have a few teams in the Evansville area, like Evansville Memorial, Castle High School is pretty good. Um, uh, there's a couple other schools here in Evansville that like have the chance to really keep growing, but the thing is they're always going to run to that Evansville Memorial and
Yeah.
Castle juggernaut. And then you've got all the Indianapolis schools. There's so many good schools in Indianapolis, but then there's even more schools that are good in Fort Wayne.
Right.
So you've got really like 3 hubs, the 3 largest cities basically, um, where these quality high school teams are at. And so it's like I said, it's just kind of hit and miss because like I've got coaching friends that will talk and like they went to a high school game to go watch a kid that they were recruiting, and sometimes like, oh yeah, like their high school team is better than their club team, or sometimes it's been, well, that's not the player that I saw at this showcase that I fell in love with. Like I didn't see that person there, so um, I don't have anything against high school soccer. It's just it really is hit and miss.
Yeah, and I think for me, like the thing that's always kind of like made the most sense is like you as a coach or coaches in general, you only have so much time, and like so
Mhm.
logistically going to a showcase tournament where you have the chance to see whatever X amount of kids versus going to a high school
Yeah.
game where probably at most you're going to see is like the very most is like 3 kids, unless you go to a like you're saying, if you go to like two powerhouse high schools, but that's like the state championship,
Yeah.
right? Besides
Hmm.
that, you're so it makes more sense to go to a showcase tournament than a high school game. Um, but I am a little
Yeah.
I am surprised though to hear that like there are coaches that are going to high school games because I imagine it's probably local.
I mean, it is. It's because it's local, and the thing that we always tell kids and families, like the line I use a lot is, Brescia University women's soccer. We are not the University of Alabama football team. Like we just can't hop on a jet every weekend
Yeah,
and go watch one high school game. Like that's not going to happen. Like
exactly.
we all college soccer recruiting budgets. Most of the time, if you say that, coaches will go, "What's that?"
Yeah,
But
exactly.
like our recruiting budgets are so small that we have to get the most out of our dollar, and we're going to go. I can say like on Brescia's instance, like a local high school game, I'll go watch. Like
For sure.
that's not a problem. But like I can't go to Chicago for one high school game,
No.
or I can't go to um, Durham, North Carolina, just for one game, like one high school game. Like it's gotta we gotta maximize our value. So like high school showcases, like there's a really it's the first one that I've seen ever actually. Like maybe I'm blind to it, but there's a thing called the PepsiCo showcase series in Chicago.
Yep.
That's a high school soccer showcase, like college showcase, and it's highly attended and it's
Oh.
huge. Now this was my first year going to it this past summer. Now, granted, because of COVID, the turnout was a little bit smaller than what it normally is, but it's like a week long thing. And a ton of my friends in the Midwest region, like that, they do a big ton of amount of recruiting at this thing. And it made me think like, man, like, okay, like these Illinois teams are pretty good. Like, this is kind of cool. They do. I was like, what if Indiana did this? Like, oh my gosh, like all the teams that like we all want to see play each other. This would be such a cool event
That
for
is
them to be able to do.
that is for
And so
sure
then in
cool.
my mind, I'm like, man, like every state needs to do this because there. I mean, you can attest this. Like, how many kids do you know of that are good players in high school but don't play club because they probably play another sport that's at the same time?
Yeah.
So it'd be giving those kids that opportunity to be seen by college coaches and be like, hey, like you could play in college.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing is like there's some kids that we talk about, right? They play for clubs that are well below their level or whatever
Very
because they can't afford to play like
facts.
and so high school, I mean, what most you pay is the $75 pay to play thing or whatever it is.
That was another thing about Michigan. I was like, what are y'all doing?
Yeah, it's crazy. It doesn't make sense.
Because because like we don't have that in Indiana, or
It's
they don't have
stupid.
in Kentucky.
It's completely stupid. It doesn't make any sense. It is the dumbest thing of all time. Like, wait, you have to pay to play for your high school? Like,
Yeah,
come on, like, give me a break. Like, I get it. Like, you have to get a physical that costs $10, but besides that, like, you shouldn't have to pay.
yeah,
It's absolutely ridiculous. But like those kids that can't afford to play club soccer, there's plenty in America
hmm
that can't afford to play. That given the like be if they were able to be in that circumstance, will be way better than a lot of the kids
oh
that can
yeah,
afford it. And so like
yeah,
something like that where like they can go play for their high school team in that. And so granted, it might cost them some money, but but that opportunity is there for a kid
yeah.
that normally falls through the cracks to at least have a chance.
This,
Where
I mean, there was a kid that I coached at Vincent's Lincoln. We had, like I said, we had a lot of kids off that team who went and played college soccer. We had a left back that was second on our team in assist,
oh wow,
and he was not far behind our leader. And he was just, by God, he was one of the best defenders I've ever seen. And our like the two best players on our team would always go on about how good he was, and we would laugh because he only played soccer 2 months out of the year, and because he was a golfer. And
wild.
we went to a team camp at a D1 school, and the coaches there were like, "Who's all looking at that kid?" And I'm like, nobody to my knowledge. And they were like, why? Oh, because he's a golfer. And they're like, what do you mean he's a golfer? I was like, he literally, this is the first time he's played soccer since last season. And they
That's
were like,
crazy.
what? I'm like, yeah. And so like seeing this PepsiCo showcase, like I think of players like him. And I'm like, man, like if we could have played a game in front of hundreds of college coaches, obviously he went on to play golf in college and it's fine. It's whatever. But like, what if, some school that caught his attention and was like, hey, like, we're really interested in you playing soccer, would that have changed anything?
Right.
I don't know. But like, just to have those options out there. So yeah, I think that was really kind of groundbreaking for me. And I'm sure it happens in other states, but it just really kind of got me thinking like, man, like that's something that kind of needs to be done because how, again, everything I do is for the kids.
Yeah, for
And it's
sure.
like, to give kids, like you were saying, like they just play high school soccer, whatever the reason may be, that they don't play club or they don't play year round. Like let's give them a chance to be seen by college coaches, and where college coaches are going to get the bang for their buck, because they're going to be able to see more than one game. They're going to be able to see a lot of players. Like that's just it's stuff like that. I'm just okay. Like if I wasn't coaching, like this is stuff I would do. Like I would try to set this up and
Yeah,
have
for sure.
these teams go like that. But that's way too much work, and I would never ever want to do that.
Yeah, like you
I
said,
would again. I would come up with the idea, but
idea
I'm
guy. Yeah,
not, for
that's
sure, for
that's
sure.
that's awesome. Want to we talked a little bit about it, kind of, but obviously with soccer chat, um, obviously it's been a huge part of your life and a huge part
Yeah.
of what's gotten you where you are, like you said. Um, but it's not. I mean, just from what I know, it's not the only like thing that you've done podcasting wise as well. Is that
Yeah.
obviously you had, I believe, was the Shaun Soderling podcast. Uh,
Yes, Sean Soderling show. Say
yeah,
that 5 times fast.
yeah, right. Yeah, don't hope you're not a stutterer. That's all I gotta say,
No,
right?
yeah. So I always joke with people like I think I tried. I think it was 3 or 5 podcasts that
No.
just bombed. I wouldn't say okay, so I wouldn't say that the Sean Sarling show bombed. Like it was pretty cool. It was just talked about sports.
Yeah,
That's really all I did, and it was a way to put my broadcasting degree to use and get
fair
my
enough.
mom off my case. And so I just really I found that I enjoyed it. Um, and really the last one before Soccer Chat, Sean Sarling show was the last one I did, and I really was just doing it. It got to a point where I was doing it just to like give my friends something to listen to and myself,
Yeah,
and like because I knew like nobody was going to listen to it. Um, and I couldn't even tell you like the last episode I did. I was just like, all right, this is the last one. And then when we were living in Michigan, actually, I um, was responding to he was with Duke football. Now he's at Texas Tech. Derek Jones, who's a fantastic follow for any coach, no matter what the sport is. He's got a book called Always Play to Win, and his tweets go along with that book, and he always uses the hashtag AP2W. Um, and I responded to a tweet that he had posted, and all of a sudden I just started getting this like unleashing of tweets responding to me, like, "Oh my gosh, what a great idea, Bo!" And I was just like, "What is this?" And then out of nowhere, these coaches all were like, "Are you a offensive coordinator? Like, are you what positions are you coaching?" And I was like, "What?" And I realized that I had jumped myself in a Texas high school football chat. And I was just like, "Oh boy, this I." And I had to back. Sorry y'all. Like I'm a soccer coach, other football, but I did play football in high school for a couple of years. Does that count? Um, and the company who ran the Twitter chat shot me a DM and was like, "Hey, like, would you want to do this for soccer? Because we see that like soccer coaches at the time, are not as they're not utilizing social media as much, and
100%.
the soccer kids like are some of the worst on social media. And they're like, we want to try to like change that and help. Like, would you want to help us out? I was like, yeah, sure. How do I do that? And so they're like, hey, just send us questions. We'll post them and we'll do this basically like what this high school football chat does. I was like, all right, that's cool. So we started it. And the first night I did it, there was only 6 people on. And I was like, all right, 6 is better than one. I'll
Yeah.
take it. Um, and it just kept getting bigger and bigger each week and bigger each week and bigger each week to where I think part of it was like that convention experience that made me go like, okay, like I want to do more than just like I want to give more than just this Twitter chat.
Right.
And so I asked the company, I was like, hey, like, because at the time, like, then I started doing the questions I was posting. Like, I pretty much like took over control of Soccer Chat, and I was like, hey, like, I want to do a podcast, and they were like, do people even listen to those? And I was like that, and this is, I mean, granted, this is 4 years ago,
Right.
and at the time, podcasts really were still kind of they were
Yeah.
still kind of growing. And I said, yeah, I go, that's really all I listen to in the car. Like I go on these recruiting trips and I'll put a podcast on and listen. I go, but I go, I don't listen to soccer podcasts. And I said, that's the problem. And they were like, okay, like, well, you know, like, how are we going to be able to do this? And I was like, well, I have a broadcasting background. I have the editing software. Like I'll do it. And like, well, are you going to have a co-host? And I was like, I guess I could. They're like, well, who's going to be? And I was like, I don't know. And, so Nick Rizzo, who's now at St. Mary's, Minnesota, Nick was one of the first people on Soccer Chat and was there like every week. And I just reached out to him on a DM one day. I was like, hey man, like you want to do a podcast? And he was like, I don't know what that is, but sure. Um, and so I kind of explained it to him and he was like, yeah, dude, like let's do it. And so we recorded the first episode of Soccer Chat with Scott Phipps from Aldous and Bros because I knew that he'd be an easy target for us to use. Um, and I just like within the first 5 minutes, like I was like, this is it. Like this is the one that's going to go. And so, you know, we did the first few episodes based off of topics.
Yep.
You know, we did like creating a culture and stuff like that.
Oh yeah.
And you know, recruiting and you know, it's all this other stuff. And I wouldn't even pay attention because it made me think of when I would attempt to listen to soccer podcasts and he'd be talking tactics. I'm a visual learner. If I can't see it, I'm not going to pick it up.
Yeah.
So Nick would always make fun of me because I could always get our guests to tell me some type of story, and he would always make fun of me and call it story time with Shaun. And I listened to everybody knows I'm a big professional wrestling fan. So I was listening to
Oh, that's amazing. I love that. Well, I have stories for you after this, by
sweet.
the way.
Um, so I'm a big I listen to like every episode of Colt Cabana's The Art of Wrestling. And the thing I loved about The Art of Wrestling was it made you develop a personal connection to these wrestlers.
Yep.
Not just the ones that you saw on TV, ones that are wrestling in high school gymnasiums. Like you drew this emotional attachment. Like you wanted to go out and watch them. You wanted to pay money to go see them. You wanted to pay and buy their shirts because you got this story about their journey. And I remember just being like, man, like maybe that's story time. So I made Nick listen to a couple episodes of Art of Wrestling. And he was like, dude, it's your podcast. Like, do whatever. And I was like, we'll give it a shot. And so Randy Waldron was our first one where we did this like, tell us your journey. Let's tell stories and just talk shop.
Yeah.
And Randy's such a great storyteller. And he's got so many good stories. It also helped that he had just taken the Pittsburgh job. So like that helped us like promote the show and stuff like that.
For sure.
And you know, ever since then, that's kind of how our show's been. You know, a lot of people joke. We always tell people when they come on our show, like, look, it's really like convention. You're typically somewhere with a drink in your hand and you're meeting some new coach and you just start talking and you order more drinks and you start talking. And so, you know, during our show, you can typically hear cans opening or bottles getting clunked and stuff like that because we try to keep it like the way convention is. And so just hearing people's journeys for me, because I'll always remember my grandfather telling me some of the best ways to learn things in life is to sit in a car ride with somebody who's done it before and just shut up.
Yep.
Like listen to them talk. And that's really kind of what I do on the show because Nick has all the good questions. I just edit it and pop in and attempt to sound good. But it just really I've learned so much from that. Like, don't get me wrong, like my licensing courses have been incredible, but I have picked up so much just from listening to other people. I know as much as I talk, people are going, this dude listens to people. You'd be shocked. But Soccer Chat's just been, it's been so incredible. And, you know, looking back on all the shows, podcasts that I've made before, other than a really like crazy comedy sports one that I did with a good friend of mine that I used to teach high school with, because we would film it or we would record it during a class period. So we had like a live audience of our students, where he would do Will Ferrell's impersonation of Harry Carey the entire 40 minutes of the
That's
podcast.
amazing.
Um, and I always thought that was going to be the one. And there are times now where like something will happen with Soccer Chat, and he'll send me a text back, dude, that should have been TAP, which we were called Totally Awesome Podcast.
That's amazing.
He's like, man, that should have been TAP. And there's like, we keep talking about like, we may bring that back. Like we wouldn't have a live audience, but like, I don't know if I could do him doing Will Ferrell doing Harry Carey for 45 minutes, but um, it might work. But I knew something special was going with Soccer Chat. Like Nick and I did the show for 6 months before we ever met each other in person. And like so many people were like, "Oh my god, like you guys are best friends. You know each other for a long time." And I'm like, "I've known this dude for 3 months," and then it was like, "I've known this dude for 6 months, and I've never met him in person."
Yeah.
Everybody's like, "What?" And the first time I met him, I was working a camp in Chicago, and I took him to a pro wrestling show at a bar in Chicago.
That's amazing.
It was his first wrestling show, and if anybody knows Nick likes to have a beer with people, and I was like, hey, pro wrestling and at a bar, like this would be a good spot for us to meet at,
Oh, for
and
sure.
it was and I still think to this day, even because that was going on almost 4 years ago, um, I bet we've still only been in person together 7 times, maybe.
Wow. That's crazy.
So like it's a pretty cool. It just has like a pretty cool story. And anybody who listens to our show, the thing I enjoy about it, we've had over 200,000 listeners, and you can kind of tell like after it got popular, like people would listen to the new episode and then go all the way to the back at the catalog and start listening to catch up. So it's almost like we've had people say like, oh, like I like instead of Netflix and chill, I soccer chat and chill, or hey, I know I'm going to be on this like 5 hour flight, so like I know like that's 5 episodes of soccer chat I can listen to.
Right, for sure.
So that's just it's been so crazy, and you know, um, I would actually speak at that PepsiCo showcase. Nick and I were both there, and there was these guys sitting behind us at a game that we were watching. Like there was, all the coaches were there recruiting, and Nick got up and turned around, and this guy, I could just hear him. He goes, "You're Nick from Soccer Chat." Oh my God, it's Nick Rizzo from Soccer Chat. And I was like, anytime people recognize Nick, I put him over so much to talk about how much of a superstar he is. So I'm just sitting there eating it up, like, and I know he's waiting for me to get up and like walk with him, and I'm not doing it. And these guys are just going on to him. And he's like, yeah, yeah, amazing. Like, I love doing the show. It's fun. What's your guys' favorite episode? Making small talk and whatnot. And I'm just like, one of our buddies like, hey, aren't you going to get up and go with him? I was like, no, I'm just going to sit here. And so I hear Nick like tell the guys bye or whatever. He was walking away. I was like, all right, I think I can like sneak through here. And so I get up and I start walking. And one of the guys like looks at me. And I think I'd only been at Brescia for like 5 weeks. And actually had the same pullover on. And the guy was like, are you at Brescia University? And I was, yeah. He goes, you're Shaun from Soccer Chat. And I was like, yeah, I am, aren't I? And he was like, oh my gosh. He's like, and Nick was sitting beside you. I was like, yeah. I was like, I kind of like get away from him a little bit every now and then. Um, but it's so cool because it's introduced me to so many coaches. And, I by no means like Nick tries to like make us out to be celebrities. He's like, man, people come up to us all the time. And I'm just like, people don't know who we are. They're like,
We have a very niche
yeah.
audience. It's
But it's things like convention
yeah,
that really showcases you like what you're doing.
yeah, for sure.
And I had the wild idea in Chicago to do a meet and tweet,
Oh,
and
nice.
thinking like people would like, because I wanted to get the people who saw each other on Twitter every single week who had never met each other, like, let's get everybody together real quick, we'll hang out, we'll tweet about it, we'll take pictures or whatever. I think we had like 40 people at that moment in time. And it was just kind of like, oh, this is so cool. And then we went to the exhibit hall, and I had gotten Soccer Chat pullovers for Nick and I. and how many people like we couldn't even like walk like 5 steps to exhibit help out somebody pulling us up like I listened to your show and this is like it's like infancy. And now like in Kansas City or in Baltimore last year, and we've done some other symposiums and conventions, and like how many people reach out or like will walk up to us like, oh my god, like I've listened to your show since day one. And it's just it's crazy. Like I
Yeah.
don't like, it's humbling and I love it. It's just such a it's a cool experience, but at the same time, it's still that like small hometown from Boonville, Indiana
You're
kid.
right.
Like, what is this? Like we have these guys that every time we do some type of live show, if they're around, like they bring us the joke is they bring us a brown bag with a 6 pack of beer in it, and like it's like why on earth are people doing that for us?
Right.
It just happens. And it's I think the coolest thing from Soccer Chat is how it's given so many people voices
Yep.
to showcase their knowledge or showcase their soccer IQ, whatever you want to call it. Um, and I always joke with people like I'm one of those people that if I do something, in case I do it well, it's going to make people go, well, if he can do it, I can do that. And there are so many of our listeners and our Twitter chatters that have started their own podcasts
Right.
from our show, and so it's really cool. Like Anna Turi, she's 15. She has a podcast called Keep the Game Beautiful,
Oh
and
wow.
it's a huge show. And her and her dad were are soccer chatters on Twitter,
That's
and
amazing.
then Anna started her own show, and it's just it's such a cool thing. And we were looking at Podcast Row in Baltimore and in Chicago too. Like, okay, like how many of these people used to be soccer chatters? And like we keep in mind. And actually, I can remember like we met Anna and Dan in Chicago, and they talked to us about how we did the show and whatnot. And Nick was like, "Talk to Shaun." He's like, "All I do is talk." It's like I explained like the editing and stuff like that, and then by that time next year, they had started keeping the game beautiful. And I know there's some other. Joe Clary just started one, I think last week. Started a soccer coaching podcast, and it's just been really cool to kind of see that almost like a coaching tree. It's a podcast tree, I guess. Like people who listen to our show and got the idea to start their own, and I think that's also like the other beautiful thing about it.
No, I think it's really cool. Like it's like you said, like that whole like giving people a voice thing. Like, I did this, and I was talking to my friends, and of course I was like, yeah, I'll meet people along the way, and that's amazing. I love, like you. If I was on the other side, I'd be exactly in your shoes, where like
Mm-hmm.
I want to talk. I love talking to people. I love telling stories. I don't mind.
Yeah.
I don't mind talking about myself either. That's fine. I don't.
Dude, I poop on myself all the time on Soccer Chat.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like if that's one thing, if people listen to our show, they probably don't think I'm a good coach because I constantly trash
Just
myself.
complete. Oh, I'm the most, and I laugh about this with my friends and like like other coaches. I'm like, I am the most self-deprecating person you've ever met in your life.
Mm-hmm.
It's not even funny. But so like I love all that things, and so that with the podcast, like meeting these new people and like you said, giving them like a voice or whatever, or,
Yeah.
I guess boosting their voice, like because it's so crazy, like there's so many amazing like people with like crazy stories and good stories
Yeah.
within the soccer community that you never
Mm-hmm.
hear because soccer is just not held at the same, like at least like this end of it, right? Obviously
Mm-hmm.
soccer is the biggest sport in the world and those type of things, but like the people that aren't in like the highest levels, you don't ever get
Yeah.
to hear from it. And like so like being able to do that, right? Like talking to like, you and I, obviously you have a bigger following and stuff, but like we're able to get together and talk, and like the amount of people I've talked from England that are just like in like small academies or like
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that. It's like they're grinding it out, and like people never hear them talk.
The thing I've loved about it is once we started kind of doing the whole like story time thing, it really just was about like showcasing personalities
Yep,
too.
100%.
And so many college coaches want to do our show because they will then when their episode comes out, they'll send it to recruits.
Yep.
And then they'll send us the text messages from recruits like, hey, like I listened to your episode Soccer Chat, like, and it made me like it confirmed to me like you're the coach I want to play for in college. So like it's just like there's so many different avenues for it. And it allows like, we've got friends who when they're with us, they're super funny, they're super entertaining,
Yep.
but when they're in that like coaching stage, they're kind of dull.
Yep.
And we're like, if you would like way you are around us, if you would showcase that, who knows? And so like we've had some of those people on the show, and we're like, okay, like we're gonna like change your personality with this, and we've done, and we've been able to do it. It's again, like you said, like giving people a voice and being able to showcase something about themselves. I'm trying to think. There's so many. I'm trying to think of like one off the top of my head. Um, gosh, like we had Jenny Ruiz Williams, who's now the head coach at UNLV,
Okay.
and we actually interviewed Jenny when she not this previous fall, but the fall before that, she was at Oregon State with Matt Kagan, who's a good friend of mine. And Matt was like, "You need to have Jenny on the show." And I was like, "For sure, for sure." And Jenny played for the Mexican national team and played in the World Cup. And but then when I heard the story of how she played in the World Cup was crazy because Jenny just had 4 kids, was on a treadmill watching the World Cup, watching the Mexican national team play, and getting upset while she's on the treadmill about how they were playing, and then started cranking up the speed on her treadmill to see how fast she could go. And she knew if she could get to a certain speed, that she could go on that TV and do what those players were doing.
Yeah.
And she like found herself doing that, not just the Mexican national team games. And she started watching other teams play and started doing the exact same thing. And it made her go, I think I can still play. And so she came back and played, tried out for the national team, worked her way in, played in every minute but one of the next World Cup.
That's amazing.
And it's like, so people just know, like, yeah, like Jenny Ruiz playing, like she was fantastic at UNLV when she played there. She played for Mexican national team in the World Cup, but they don't know that story that
Yeah.
she had just had all of her kids and decided, I'm going to give this a shot.
Yep. That's it.
And it's stuff like that. Like you hear that, and again, it brings that emotional attachment. Mike Mismer, he was a college coach for Penn State Lehigh. He's now a college coach or a high school coach in Pennsylvania, and we always call Mike the bodyguard of Soccer Chat because if you see his ears and you see those UFC ears, and Mike
Oh yeah.
is I think he's I believe it's a third-degree black belt.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Former
you don't mess with him.
former MMA fighter, just retired from being a corrections officer. And when we were talking with him, and him talking about, like, he didn't play soccer growing up, his kids did, but because he was a fighter, and how he brings all this stuff from his fighting background into coaching. And it's just like you're sitting there going, "Oh my gosh!" Like, would never like
Right.
known this.
Yep.
And so it's just like so many things, like you said, like you can take away, but these coaches have to have that ability to like, I guess to talk about it. I guess is the only way to say it. Gosh, there's so many that I can think of. Stories just like those two. You've got, um, I have to say, Dr. Laura Jackson, who's now an assistant at Kansas. When we were interviewing her, she was a assistant coach for the Jamaican national team, but was still playing because she technically was tried out for the national team for the last World Cup because she thought she would like they thought she was going to play, and she had featured in some games when we interviewed her, and she did really well, was getting good ratings, and so we're sitting there going like, she's going to get onto the World Cup team because of this. And Nick and I joke ourselves like we're the reason why people are getting these like big names. And Leslie Gallimore coined the phrase "the soccer chat effect" because for a while there, well, no, it's still true. If you've been on our show, at least within a year and a half after your show, you will move on to something bigger. And so like that's kind of been the cool thing. Like everybody who's the majority of people who have been on our show have moved on to something bigger. So then we have them come back on and talk about, their new position and stuff like that. So yeah, we've done, I mean, specific soccer chat episodes. I think we're on like 158, but we've done actually over probably 180 shows because we've done like a lot of like special shows.
Yeah, for sure.
And there's so many now to where like I'll mention somebody's name like, oh yeah, when we interviewed them 4 years ago. Nick was like, we didn't interview them 4 years ago. I'm like, yeah, check the books, like we interviewed them 4 years ago. um there's so many stories just like that, like
That's amazing.
Jenny's and so many others. We just had it hasn't been released yet, but we just had Yael Averbuch West on.
Okay.
And we brought up Jenny's story to Yael because Yael just had her first child, and had her illness that had to cause her to step away from the game. I brought up the point that she never said the word retire. when she stepped away, and she kind of was like, yeah, like that's kind of what we're seeing now. Like, how am I going to be after, having this baby and,
Right.
and whatnot. So, there's so many stories like that, again, so many of our listeners become fans of the teams that these people are coaching,
Yep.
and they start following them online. They start watching their games on TV, or if it's a high school team, and they're streaming their games. The people will watch those streams, and it's just so cool to give everybody this community and this support group. Really, is what it is, because we got super heavy supportive when this whole pandemic started.
Yep.
And so many coaches really reached out, like appreciating what Soccer Chat had done, because I did. I had I started the job at Brescia, and my first week nobody told me it was spring break for the kids, so nobody was on campus. I thought the joke was on me. Then they come back, and 2 days later they're getting sent home for the
Oh no.
semester. And so I was still having to go into the office, and my wife and kids were on spring break, so they went up to Michigan. I stayed here, so I go to the office. When they stopped making us go to the office, and my wife was like, "Well, like we're not gonna have to come back for a while. Like we're just gonna stay up there for like 3 weeks." I was like, "That's fine." And so I started thinking to myself, like, okay, like there's probably some coach somewhere who's in this, because at the time, like it was like lockdown, like you couldn't leave your house.
Right.
Um, I was like, there's some coach somewhere who may have just moved somewhere, or they were kind of like me in Michigan, where like, I didn't really have any friends. Like yeah, like I had coaching colleagues, but like I'd never like really like hung out with anybody
Right. For
other
sure.
than other than men's league. So it's like, and they don't have anybody to talk to. And I'm also a massive mental health advocate. And as somebody who has fought depression for 36 years, like I understand it, and I get it. And
Right.
so I'm thinking of people who like would possibly be in my shoes, or what I would be like if I was in their shoes.
Right.
So I started this thing called Coach's Call, where at the time it was Skype, because nobody knew what Zoom was yet,
That's
before
true.
Zoom
That's true.
before Zoom ruined everybody's lives, or
Yep.
maybe made it better, depends on who you ask.
Yep.
But I put it out on Twitter and just said, hey, if you want to talk soccer, if you just want to talk about life, or you just need somebody to talk to,
Yeah.
reach out and sign up for this and let me talk to you. Let me be ears for you if you want to rant, whatever it may be. And I had 55 coaches sign up for like the first week. And so it was just like every hour, all day long. Like I'm just like, doing these calls with coaches.
That's
I
amazing.
got to meet so many more coaches who had never heard of our show or had never seen our Twitter chat. They just saw, United Soccer Coaches tweet about this and say, hey, reach out to this guy. And I was doing, like, every person I would talk to, I would do a screenshot of it and then post it. It's like, hey, this person came on Coach's Call, and here's what we talked about. And it just got more and more people to get on. And you know I, I don't know about other people. I know, like, for me, like those first few weeks of the pandemic, with my family being away, and
Yeah.
kind of, and being worried about that, like I needed somebody to talk to
Yeah. For
as
sure.
well. And so there were so many coaches that I talked to. We talked soccer on all of them, and there was a few coaches who were younger college coaches, like, yeah, like I don't have any friends. Really the only people I talk to is my team, and they're gone, and I don't, like, I got all these ideas, but I don't know if they're good or not, because I don't have anybody I can bounce the ideas off
Yeah.
to. And so it's like I picked up so many of the ideas I've done this year just from talking with these other people. Um, and so it just really, like, this year at convention, people stopped by our digital booth virtually. And I had so many people reach out that was like, man, like the Wednesday night Twitter chats have helped me so much during this pandemic, because it's allowed me to get that conversation with other coaches and to talk and press ideas where we couldn't really do that. To which then I'm a jerk. I'm like, well, your phone still worked during the pandemic. You could have gotten on Twitter on Wednesday nights. Cheap plug. But um, you know, the, the same way it felt for them was the same way for me.
Yeah. For
And
sure.
it was, we had mentioned during this convention, like, I have felt personally, and I don't know what it's like where you're at, but I feel like just soccer chat alone, so many of us have just come together, like even more than what we had
Yeah.
when since this pandemic has kind of gone on. And I can't tell you what it was, or what it caused it, but like, I started doing, when the coaches call started taking off, I would do college coaches Zoom, and then I'd have a big group of college coaches come on, and we'd have, I think at one time we had like 85 college coaches on. I did a high school coaches call, and we had a bunch of high school coaches come on. We did a club coaches call, and I would do these like every week, just so people could come on. And we had it to where like with the colleges, we would talk about what our schools were doing and go, oh, that's a pretty good idea. Well, then we go back to our school and say, hey, this is what so and so university is doing. Do you think that would work here? Oh, yeah, yeah. Like that sounds like a great idea. So I know, like with us, like a lot of our like COVID procedures, our school picked up from what I was learning from other schools. Because our AD was like, well, what are you hearing from whoever? And I'd be like, well, this school's doing this conference is doing this. And it made our school go, okay, well, if that's what they're doing, then let's do something similar. So
Wow.
there was just such
Crazy.
a coming together moment that I think people just like are yearning to get back into it, because there are some coaches who still have not coached a game since
Yeah.
last March,
Yep.
which is crazy to think about. I'm very fortunate enough to have to coach this fall, um, but I think that there's just like people are yearning for that like soccer interaction,
100%.
and that's why I the last convention in Indianapolis is the highest attended one ever. I really believe next year in Kansas City
Oh,
is going to be the highest one attended ever, because it's in the Midwest, so West Coast and East Coast can get to it. But I think because of people not being able to go to Anaheim this year and like needing that interaction with coaches, because I mean in the virtual one it did its job.
yeah,
I
for
I,
sure.
I enjoyed the sessions and things like that, but I think next year's convention you're just going to see just I everything that I've been experiencing with coaches interacting, like talking with you, talking with other coaches, to be able to do that face to face and in person in 2022
Yep.
is going to be insane for the sport. And I think in 2023, because of what happens at the convention, I think in 2023 you're going to see soccer coaching just go to a whole new level, grassroots style, your high schools, your colleges, your clubs, because I think that we're really kind of itching for that interaction to be all back together.
Oh, I agree. I'm very excited for the future. Obviously, it's been really tough, and at
Yeah.
times it's been, yeah, I mean, even more so. Like even getting back and then being in different phases and a lot of those things, you just can see it though. Like, when we had the moments to get back, you had
Hmm.
everybody coming back and like ready to go and different things like that. And I think the coaches especially were just ready to like have that again, right? Like have
Yeah.
that ability to be around other people and communicate. We all need it. We all
Yeah.
got to talk
And
to
it's
people.
been crazy to live in a state where, like, I mean, every state that's surrounding us is different
Yep.
in what they're doing. And
100%.
like, here in Indiana, they started high school soccer, I think just like 2 weeks later than what they normally start.
Yeah, it's not bad.
And Kentucky started like 3 weeks after that. And like a good friend of mine that coaches in Kentucky, uh, his team came over to play in Indiana, and two of his kids are committed to Brescia. So I went over to watch him. And he before the game, he's like, I'm so worried about this. He's like, this team is good. I was like, dude, your team goes to state like every year. And he was like, we've practiced for a week. This team has been playing full on games for 3 weeks.
Oh.
And I was like, oh, that's right. Because in Kentucky, they couldn't play games if the county was in a red zone. So like
Okay.
his entire schedule was getting canceled because all the counties surrounding it, because there's a lot of consolidated schools in Kentucky,
Right.
all their games were getting canceled. So he was having to come to Indiana to play because Indiana was still open and whatnot. So he's like, he goes, I have to play these games. He said, but the problem is, he's like, all these teams have been playing for a month and we've practiced for a week. Um, so, and I know like Ohio was kind of different. We've got some commits that are coming in from
Yep.
Ohio, and I know their season was a little bit different. Illinois was what it was. I know you guys were different. But then to like, I just got back a while back from North Carolina as the rally showcase. The kids have been playing down there like it's nothing. They've been playing down there since like August or whatever.
Yeah, for sure.
And so it's just been so different to see what every state is like. I've got friends who coach college in California at schools who said last March that they weren't going to play this year. And so, they've had to go through this whole year, with what's going on.
Yeah,
And,
yeah, it's
you know,
crazy.
and I know when I was up, actually, we come up to Michigan every year for Christmas. And I was like kind of looking forward to, because I typically like, it's like 2 days before Christmas Eve, I'll go work a camp in Chicago. Well, they had pushed it earlier and I've already done that one. But I kept saying like to myself, like, oh, like maybe somebody's playing in the domes or whatever. Like I can go like watch something
Right.
and go recruit. And I remember getting a hold of one of the fusion coaches for Midland, and I was like, hey man, because he always tells me about his team and things he'd like me to help him out with. I was like, hey, like, I'm going to be up there. Like, tell me when your sessions are. Like, I'll stop by and do something. And he was like, "Are you an idiot?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Do you watch the news?" And I was like, "Actually, I don't.
No, I don't.
I don't." And he was like, "Dude," he's like, "We've been shut down." He's like, "We can't do it." He's like, "There's no soccer, like period." And I was like, "Really?" He was like, "Yeah." And I'm sure it depends on where you're at.
Yeah,
Um,
it does.
but I know, like, yeah, and probably in Saginaw, no rules there.
We weren't in Saginaw.
Uh, but and that was so weird because like I was really planning like going up there and like, trying to hang out and catching up with whatnot, and then to know like I could just drive 9 hours and
It's crazy.
be right back into it. So I know like there's been like I saw a Michigan team play in Indianapolis in November,
Yep.
and the only reason I knew they were a Michigan team, well, I knew it was a Midland team, but all the Michigan teams at the cross or it wasn't crossroads, but whatever their fall showcase is, the teams from Michigan had to have masks on during games, and so like I was just like, oh my gosh, like that's crazy. I was talking to some of the parents, and they're like, yeah, like the only way we can play is if we travel out of state. So we had to come down and play this. But if we play in this, we had to have our mask on and whatnot, which, they were kind of complaining about. But then I went down to North Carolina and I was literally watching referees stop games because kid would get a ball and start dribbling and they didn't have their mask up. But they could have it down if they didn't have a ball. But if they had the ball, they had to pull it up. So
Yeah.
it was like,
Uh,
yeah, it was kind of
it's
mind blowing.
there's some bizarre stuff going on, and like
Yeah.
we're and just to make sure no one thinks that we were just like out willy nilly playing. We,
Yeah,
we
yeah.
we were doing more like personalized team training. That was kind of like
Mhm.
the way, and it's what it was. And like to be fair, like it was not the greatest, but
Yeah.
like it was just one of those like improvising things, right? Like this is allowed. This
Mhm.
place is going to allow us to practice inside because we can. Um,
Yeah.
this is the way around it because it's like our kids have missed so much. We just want to get them out there.
Mhm.
And, like I'll be honest, like I would have 4 kids at like sessions and we would just combine a lot of sessions because in the most common answer was I want to see my grandma for Christmas. It's like, oh yeah, fair play.
Yeah.
Like no, yeah, like I got no argument with that one. Like
Yeah,
usually,
absolutely.
usually I can come up with some kind of argument for why like you can make practice. Nope, that you got me on that one. I'm
Oh
stumped.
yeah. And I mean, that's the gosh, like in our conference this fall, we had one men's team who went on quarantine 6 times.
Oh my,
And they still have 8 games to make up.
oh my
So
god.
like our conference had to push they had already extended our season 1 week to where like if you had a couple games to make up, you could make it up this extra week. And then with like 3 weeks left to go, they're like, we're gonna have to make a decision at some point. And so they had to move our the rest of the season to the spring because 2 teams shut it down for the year. One team shut their season down right after we had played them because that Monday they had an outbreak on their team, or they found that they had an outbreak. We had one player who tested positive on that Tuesday,
Oh no.
and I know for a fact where they got it from. And that she was the only person who this whole fall or the whole fall we had from our program get it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it was, I had so many friends, my friends in Michigan, and other places like, oh, you're so lucky you're playing, you're training. And I was like, yeah, but at what cost?
Yeah.
Like, if you knew what we were going through just to have these games,
It's hell.
like, yeah. And like our first game of the season, like I was so jacked, like, oh my gosh, first college head coaching game, like this is gonna be so much fun.
Right.
That got canceled 5 times. Like the first game got canceled, and then I had to get a new team in. The new team 2 days later is like, hey, we can't travel outside the state. Cancel that one. Got another team in.
Oh no.
Yeah, we're playing. And then the last team before we actually played our first game, the night before, called and canceled because their state had just changed something.
Oh man. Yeah.
Um,
That's
and so we ended up we played an all conference only. Well, we had one game that we got to play that was non conference, but it was during the season. And it's like our very first match was a conference game,
that's crazy.
and it was like,
So you're
and
right into it.
yeah, and so then because we play 2 games every week, well, taking over a new team, we didn't get to start training. We weren't allowed to train until August. I think it was August 18th,
Wow.
and then our first games were allowed to be on September 5th. So I had a whole I had 4 games in August we were supposed to play, but I had to cancel those because we couldn't play games before September 5th. And then so we're playing 2 games a week for conference season. Well, so I had 2 weeks to train, and then basically, if you think about it, we could train hard on Monday, a little bit lighter on Tuesday, and then walk through on Wednesday to play on Thursday, recovery on Friday, play again Saturday, Sunday off. Monday go hard, Tuesday, so on and so on. So we never really I'm not making excuses whatsoever, but we never really got a full
Yeah.
opportunity to learn this new system and to get our players developed because we went straight into conference season, and you have to give players recovery time and you
Have
have
to.
to moderate those sessions.
Yep.
So I felt so bad for my girls, and just working with what we were working with, the constant things we had to do. Like when we actually played our first game, like we pulled up to the field and the girls were like, "Coach, are we even going to play this game?"
Right.
And I was, because we had so many games canceled. I was like, "Look, if they check our temperatures and we're good to go, and they check the other team's temperatures and they're good to go," I was like, "We're going to play." And so it's like, as soon as the trainer went through and got the last
Just
girl,
just doing this
and
the whole
her
time.
yeah, and her temperature was good, the athletic trainer's like, "All right, yeah, I already checked our team's good, you guys are good, we're going to play." And our girls were just like so excited
Yeah,
about
for
it.
sure. That's great.
um but it's just like, for me, because I don't know how the spring is going to look,
Yeah.
um because we're going to try to have men's and women's soccer, baseball, softball, and partial of a men's and women's basketball going on at the same time. And for a school our size, transportation it's going to be a logistical
All
nightmare.
right.
And the thing for it is, it's supposed to be used for soccer to make up conference games. Well, we were very, very fortunate. We're one of the few teams that actually played every conference game in the fall.
Okay.
And so for me, I just really want to train this semester and just work on these things that we
Right.
want to work on as a team. And my vision before all this happened was for the spring to train for 3 weeks, play on a Saturday,
Yeah.
train for 3 weeks, play on a Saturday, train for 3 weeks, play on a Saturday. And that may still be kind of the route that we go. um but for me, our kids just need the opportunity to learn
Yeah.
and to develop. And if and we didn't get that this fall,
Yeah.
and we also didn't get it last spring because we didn't even get to do anything last
Yeah.
spring.
That's true.
So it's my players got mad because I said, our season is kind of like a preseason, and they didn't like it. But I was like, we didn't have an opportunity to have a preseason.
Yeah.
We didn't have an opportunity to learn a new system and learn this way of playing. And unfortunately, we had to learn it one day a week, and then get moderated versions of it on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, then try to go do it on Thursday and Saturday. um, and as time went on, they started understanding that. And so they actually they all moved back today for our second semester. um, we're kind of getting things geared up, and we'll start training here next week. And I can tell that I think that time away during winter break, because we actually, our school ended early this year, or
Okay.
in the fall. um, Typically they're done I think a week or two before Christmas,
Right.
or a couple weeks after Thanksgiving. This year they actually stopped the week before Thanksgiving because we started school a little bit early. So they've had a lot of time at home to really kind of think and hopefully work on some things. um
Hopefully.
yeah, hopefully. We'll see here in a week or two. um but I, you know on our show we had John Lipsis and Bobby Papione, who, if you ever get the chance to talk to Bobby, he's a
I follow him
fantastic
on
club
Twitter. I
coach.
follow him on Twitter. Yeah.
Okay, Bobby's an amazing coach, and dare I say, an even better person. Although when you interview him, start your clock and see how long before he mentions his wife, because Manya is awesome as well. um but We had Bobby and John on the show kind of during the pandemic, and John Lipsitz is absolutely incredible, and he needs to be a much larger known coach than what he is. And I gotta give a shot to him because he's just finished on battling with COVID.
Oh wow.
um, and John made the comment about return to play, whether it was the fall or the spring. He said, you know, kids are not ready to come back and play. He's like, I don't care what anybody says. Yeah, they're itching to get back and be out there with their friends. He's like, but this whole time off that we've had, and yeah, we maybe we've done stuff through Zooms. He was like, physically and mentally, we are not ready to come back and play. And he and I talked a lot more after the show about it because again, as a mental health advocate, I definitely felt what he was talking about. Because he even said he's like, coaches are not going to be mentally ready to come back. Um, and he said that he was really worried about teams that were going to play. Like, what are we going to be doing physically to these kids because they've had how much time off? Like, yeah, they could be running in place at home, or they could be doing high interval workouts at home, whatever it may be. He's like, but it's not going to be the same.
No.
And he was saying like, he goes, I think if I would, he's like, if I was, had my club team out, he goes, I think the first week of practice, he's like, I think we would just talk and get to know each other again. Like we've been stuck in our houses for so long. And so I personally feel like that's what this semester is going to be like again, because my team has had so long apart, right? Because they haven't been together since middle of November. Now to come back, mid January, that's a lot of time away from each other. And
No, for
yeah,
sure.
I'm sure, they've texted and called and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But like, basically everything that we did in the fall, like we got to do it all over again. Um, and it's just it's crazy. And I really, I understand how lucky we are that we are getting, the opportunity to compete. We're getting the
Yep.
opportunity to train and do all that stuff. I totally get it. But at the same time, it's man, like what this is going to do um, mentally and physically for not just the kids but coaches as well. We don't know the long term effects of any of this and whatnot, but our school is really big on we got to give these kids an experience. And that's something I have said from last spring when this all kind of got started. Was like, we've got to give these kids the best experience possible.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I don't know, again, I'm just the idea guy, but like, I don't know how we can give them experiences with the situations we're putting them in. So like, I was just talking to a recruit last night from North Carolina, and her high school season is typically 3 months.
Yep.
They've condensed it to a 6-week season. And like, she was, because I saw that they were practicing, but her club team, they had posted that she had scored or whatever. So I was chatting with her. I was like, oh, I saw that you were just getting ready for your high school season or whatever. And she was like, yeah. She's like, we had like a training session. She's like, but I played with my club team this week. She's like, it's going to be really difficult because she's like, all right, typically we play high school for 3 months. She's like, and we're going to play for 6 weeks.
It's crazy.
And I was just like, you've got to be. So again, like, at what cost is it just to play games?